And at Pixabay.com, you'll find tens of thousands of different images that are all free to use. They're all public domain, which is CC0. And all you need to do is search for something you're looking for. So you've got to do a color. Again, pick a color, any color. I've picked for this demo yellow. That's all I'm going to put down in here is yellow. And you just get a whole bunch of yellow images. Now, you'll see a bunch of images at the top of every page that say Shutterstock on it. You cannot use those. Those are copyrighted images. You have to pay for them. You need to be using these images down here, and you're going to need to use a very specific aspect ratio and size. We'll talk about that in a second. In this case, we go down here to all these yellow images, and you'll see that some of them don't look like yellow. Well, there's yellow sort of maybe in this image, but you want to make sure that it's really very clear, whatever color you're picking, that that's the color you're picking. And you also want to be careful, as I said, that, okay, so this one says it's yellow. Well, that looks like orange to me. And if you have a bunch of yellow and you throw this one in there, I'll probably be telling you that, I'm sorry, that looks like it's orange. So again, this is a designer thing that you've got to be very careful about doing. At the very bottom here, you'll see that there are 482 pages of yellow images. So one of the things that I would expect you to do is to go through these and start thinking about if you want to do yellow, well, how are you going to do it? It was easier for me to find yellows that were of different amounts of yellow. In this case, this would be hard to determine. There's a little bit of yellow there, but this is also kind of a rose, orangish color. So you've got to be very careful on which images you pick. So I'm going to go scroll on down to the bottom and just go look at another page and just click here to see. You could jump through it and decide you don't want to do it in order. But you get a sense of what you've got to work with and how those colors might end up being. And what I did is knowing that I had to come up with 6, I think I got 4 times as many different images. I tried to find things that were covering the screen, kind of a little bit of yellow, moderate amounts of yellow. Tried to avoid images like this, which look like a lime to me. So that's green, maybe a really pastel shade of green. So you might be working with tints and tones and going from a light lime green to a really deep green. That's also a possible way you could be doing it. But I chose a number of images, and I'll show you. I've got 3 folders here, and the first one was the ones I downloaded originally from Pixabay. And these are all the images that I downloaded. I've got some goldfinches, and I've got some yellow leaves and a yellow bicycle and some butter toast. I've got someone painting a yellow wall, some lemon slices, corn, and fire, which had some yellow in it, but I couldn't get the orange out of it, so had to ignore that one totally. And so is this field of wheat. And when I did a little eyedropper in Photoshop, I found it really was orange. And there's some yellow sort of in here, but there's no way to get the red really out of there. And this one is problematic because while it's a yellow ladybug, really it looks like it's a green image. So you want to make sure that it's going to be very clear how your images all work. So I picked all of these, and then I went through and did a second pass. I copied the ones I selected into this first edit, and I came up with 12. And then my task with those 12 was to try to pick the best order. So here's my order. And I've numbered them. I've renamed them down. You can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so here's 1. And then number 2 has more yellow. There's even more yellow here in number 3. More yellow. And finally number 6 has a lot of yellow. And then there's these other ones that I'm not going to end up using. So I used this 12 to kind of figure out the order, and then I numbered them so they would show up in order so you could see it. But there's one thing that you can see, and that's the fact that these aren't all the right aspect ratio. So let's go back to Pixabay for a moment. If you look at this image, this clearly isn't in a video aspect ratio because it's tall rather than wide. This one is wider than it is. This one is even wider. Let's just pick an image here. I'm going to pick on this one. I'm just going to click on it, and it'll give me the download area. So when I click on free download, I get the different sizes that I can download them at. We need to be, for this assignment, at HD aspect ratio and resolution. Now, HD aspect ratio is 16 by 9. That's 16 wide by 9 high. And its size is 1920 by 1080. That's 1920 pixels wide by 1080 pixels high. Notice that this image, by default, is 1920 pixels wide by 1280 high. Well, there isn't a 1080 high. It's 1280 high. So that means what you'll have to do is you'll have to take your images into Photoshop, and you'll need to then crop them and get them to 1920 by 1080 at 72 pixels per inch. 72 pixels per inch is video resolution as well as web resolution, is screen resolution. You'll find that some of these are 1920 by 1280 at 300 pixels per inch. You'll simply need to open them up in Photoshop, make sure they have the right aspect ratio, the right size, and the right number of pixels per inch. Again, all this information is in your course. Going back to Mellow Yellow Edit here again, now that I have them in order, you can see this one is too tall. This one is about the right aspect ratio. This is 1920 by 1080. You can see that it's wider, and this one is going to need to be cropped. And here's the ones that are cropped. What I did is I brought them all into Photoshop, and I won't do that process for you. But let's go back to the flowers here. And you can see that it is not as tall as it used to be. I cropped it to make sure that I was really focused more on the yellow, so that I really had an increase in yellow here than I do over in this one. And this one had to be cropped as well. And I cropped it to make sure I got as much yellow out of it as possible, which led to this one. Still has the purple on it, but really is mostly yellow. Okay, now I have a folder called Mellow Yellow Cropped, which has my 6 images in it. And I also downloaded a piece of music that I found in Incompetech.com. It's one of my favorite places to go get Creative Commons music. And I'm ready to actually go into Premiere. So let me boot up into Premiere here. And the first thing I'm going to want to do in Premiere is I'm going to want to create a new project. Again, this project is only a text file that just points to all the video and audio elements that you've got, and use to locate the material that is in your project folder on your desktop for when the video is edited and played back. Premiere never actually cuts your original video. It actually only gets an indication of the starting and stopping points of where you want to cut the video. It never touches your original video, so you're always safe with that. So I'm going to create a new project. And the nice thing about Premiere is when it creates a new project, it doesn't really care what resolution you're going to end up with. You don't have to think about any of that initially. All you need to do is name it. So I'm going to name this one Mellow Yellow. And I need to tell it where I'm going to put it, and so I'm going to browse to my desktop. And I'm going to put it in my Mellow Yellow cropped file. So I'm going to put it right here in the same project folder with all of my raw video. If I had lots of things in here, I might put them in subfolders, but I can put, this is so small, I can put my project file right in here. All the rest of this information is really basically irrelevant for what we're going to be doing in this class. As you get more advanced, you can learn about the graphic processing unit on the graphics card in your computer. If you have an Intel chip, by the way, an Intel HD or Intel Iris chip in your computer, your laptop, you don't have a graphics card. And you are required to have a graphics card as part of the minimum requirements. Yes, you probably can do still graphics. You can work in Photoshop and Illustrator, although it'll be slower than if you had a graphics card. But as long as you've got a graphics card in your computer, you can use graphic processor acceleration, which really moves everything along. But basically, all you really need to do is name it and decide where you're going to save it. That's all you really need to do on this page. Then you say OK, and boom, we're in Premiere.